Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and today we're going to be having a look again at storm or Hurricane Laura, which is soon to be post-tropical storm Laura, as it is disintegrating now. Really, it's still a very large area of low pressure, providing still quite some significant impacts. But where it made landfall near Lake Charles, it's starting to clear up now, and the winds and the rain has started to subside. But it's still very large, and there's still a lot of rotation within it. Some big convection still, but you see the eye has sort of disintegrated away, and the wind is dying down. It's now down to Cat 1, probably soon to be tropical storm strength winds. If we have a look at the infrared, you can see a lot lesser amount of that red, which is symbolic of very high cloud tops and thick convection that we were seeing when we were in the Gulf of Mexico, showing you that it is a very significantly weakening system. And you can see the outer bands really are as strong as the centre, as much now, with some big thunderstorms actually moving on the outer bands. But it's a very large system, spreading almost to sort of the Great Lakes all the way down from the Gulf of Mexico. It's a very, very big area of low pressure now. If we have a look at water vapour, if that loads, you can still see there's still a lot of water vapour in the air, but it's coming up against some drier air, but it's still, still providing some significant rainfall. If we now move, if we move to wind speed first, we can see there is still some fairly strong gusts and some sustained winds, maybe 100 kilometers an hour plus, around the centre, but the storm is very quickly disintegrating and losing its strength. And when I mean disintegrating, I mean disintegrating from a sort of a tropical storm where it's fueled by hot oceans, but it is interestingly going to be turning more into an area of low pressure and depression, which could remain tropical, potentially. It's something I'll highlight a little bit later in the video. If we now move over to the current radar, you can see although it's significantly weakened, there's still a lot of rain in it, a lot of strength still with the rain. You can see the eye has sort of collapsed, and a few remnants of the eye wall left. So there's still some very heavy rain within it. Stretching quite far north, you even see some thunderstorms breaking out on the sort of the outflow of the storm, to its north, to its east, and even to its south as well, which could impact some of the areas that have already been destroyed really by the eye wall in the centre of the storm. These storms moving to Lake Charles could provide even more significant impacts, as there's a chance maybe some tornadoes, some gusty winds within those, and some very heavy rain as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. But the storm is falling apart from its sort of beautiful rotation that we were seeing this time yesterday, and even this morning, to be honest. If we do have a look, though, at the past radar, you can see why big flash floodings warnings were issued, even with the storm surge, plus in addition to the storm surge. But you can see how localized the very significant rain is, just as it made landfall as Cat 4 category, a Cat 4 hurricane, with that very, very significant eye wall, with torrential, biblical rain. You can see we were seeing 100, 160, 180, even getting up to maybe 200 millimeters of rain right in that eye wall. Further out, more like 60 to 80 millimeters, and quite widely, 60 to maybe even 100 millimeters. And so you see some spots up here, potentially up there, getting up to maybe 120, 140 millimeters. So widespread, quite a lot of rain. And it's kind of the centre of storms currently, really where this sort of yellow stuff is. So I'm expecting this sort of yellow centre, which is tracking with the centre of the storm, to move further north and east, and you'll start to see, and I think it just updated there again, you can see that yellow moving further north, and will become pretty widespread, 60 to 80 millimeters of rain, which is, a good 3 inches roughly, which could provide flooding in itself on top of the strong winds and storm surge. But you can see why this storm is so dangerous where you get hit by the eye wall. You just go 100 miles down the coast, or even 50 miles down the coast from this sort of purple spot, and you see areas that only saw 20 or 40 millimeters of rain from 140 millimeters. So exceptional differences, but again, that's what you see in a hurricane. Very intense core, still very strong outer bands, but it just shows you exactly where the storm packed its punch, but still providing quite significant rain. We will now move on to the National Hurricane Centre. You can see there's another disturbance, saying yesterday there's no other disturbances other than Laura, but there is another disturbance which could provide cyclone status soon. Low chance in the short term, and it's still a low chance in the long term, but it does look like a big, large tropical wave, and it's become more favourable for development as we move through the week into the weekend. So, still something to keep an eye on. But if we have a look at Laura, it's a huge area of low pressure now. And if we have a look at its exact track, you can see how it does a tropical depression before re-strengthening into a tropical storm. But it's a post-tropical storm, so it's tropical storm strength winds, but it's not being fueled by the tropics or by the warm ocean. So that's why it's very interesting to see what's going to be happening with this as it heads up further north and east. And in a minute, I'll show you what its potential track beyond that could be, and how it could, and I mean could, impact the UK. But that's something we'll highlight in a minute. But for the short term, it's going to be going further north, but then turning sort of east, making a big right turn east and sweeping through sort of Kentucky, Virginia, maybe getting close to Washington DC as it moves away. If we have a look at wind speed probabilities of tropical storm winds, it's going to very quickly diminish. The storm very significantly and rapidly diminishes down to a depression before it slowly ramps up potentially to tropical storm winds again as it goes offshore. So we could be seeing that. If we have a look at US rainfall totals, still some significant totals, 6 to 10 inches possible in there. And as you saw earlier, we were seeing a good maybe 10 inches plus in those areas affected further south. You can see even with those thunderstorms, you can see some more rain with that. If we have a look at flash flooding potential, still a very significant chance of flash flooding because there still is a bit of a storm surge, still some high waves, and still some very heavy rain. You see the middle of the storm there, still providing that dark red area, and then probably big sort of thunderstorms around the rotation of the storm, providing still some flash flooding where we've already seen the core go through, so it could exacerbate the issues. But for now, it looks like the storm has passed. The impacts have been very significant, very dangerous conditions. I haven't not seen if there's been any deaths yet, or how extensive the destruction was. But at least where it hit in Lake Charles, that's where the biggest sort of populated area it hit got very badly damaged. But luckily, it did not hit a major city, so we might have seen the strength of the storm that we saw with Katrina, but it's not looking like we can see the absolute destruction and the monetary cost that we saw with that. But lastly now, I will move on to Weather Central. Now, I normally look at this for the UK weather, but it's interesting to see how it's going to deal with Hurricane Laura, or soon-to-be ex-hurricane. This is the 6 o'clock run, so it still has Laura near the coast. But as we move through, you can see Laura starts to fill out, and that's what we saw as it was down to 240 something millibars last night, 248 millibars, I think, maybe a bit lower when it got to its highest strength. But it starts to fill out, and you can see there's still a dip there, which is symbolic of its tropical depression, or post-tropical depression, still there. But it sort of diminishes before we start to see it reforming again into an area of low pressure as it gets colder air from the north, warmer air from the south develops. Typical low pressure system with its warm front, cold front, occluded fronts, just a typical Atlantic area of low pressure. So it sort of develops, and it uses the energy of the tropical storm to develop, the ex-hurricane Laura, to develop into this storm, into this area of low pressure. And you can see that it does start to re-strengthen as it comes off the coast, and that's why they're talking about maybe tropical storm strength winds. But as it comes off the coast, you can see they're going through sort of Newfoundland area, and if you remember 81. If you have a look at Europe, so that's the system right there. Now, at this point, the UK has an area of high pressure over the top of it. Again, this is getting longer range, so it could still change. But as we move through, it gets picked up by the jet stream and sort of combines with this other area of low pressure to become quite a deep area of low pressure in the North Atlantic. And it does start to head towards the UK. Now, in this current GFS run, it sort of brings gusty winds to the northern areas, including Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England maybe, but doesn't make direct impact on the UK. It sort of moves to our north, as this area of high pressure to our east is pretty stubborn, to our south and east, pretty stubborn, blocking it out. So we could be seeing some impacts from ex-Hurricane Laura. But it's just something to keep an eye on, and forecasters, I'm sure, are keeping an eye on it. At the moment, it doesn't look like it's going to directly impact the UK, but it could, and I mean could, sort of shape into something that could hit the UK, and we might see that over the next couple of days. The models will sort of confirm what is going to happen, whether Laura does head towards the UK, or whether it stays to our north, or whether it stays sort of in the middle and does bring those strengthy winds to Scotland and probably some heavy rain, and probably brings up some quite warm air with it as well. If we run back, have a look at the upper airs for that, 144, you can see quite warm air being moved up from ex-Hurricane Laura. So, we could be seeing something from that. It could bring some quite hot weather as we bring up the 10, maybe even 15-degree ice firm. But then could be providing some strong winds and maybe some rain. So it's something to keep an eye on with that for our weather next week. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Luckily, Hurricane Laura was not. It's not going to be likely as destructive as other storms have been. Luckily, as it made landfall in a less populated part, still people lives have probably been ruined and have been severely affected. But luckily, it did not hit a major city and destroyed like a million or a few million people's lives. But luckily, that happened. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed subscribing, and I'll see you again tomorrow, probably for another update.